Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to today's webinar. It will be about archiving and data management with Retain by Guava. My name is Vanessa Lisek, and I'm happy to welcome you to the webinar today and to hold this for you. Just a few details in advance. The webinar will be in listen-only mode, so please, if there are any questions, you feel free to use the chat window, and then I can either address the questions during the webinar or maybe at the end. So just a quick introduction about Guava. We have got offices all over the world. So the headquarters are in Montreal, Canada, and we're also represented in the USA, Germany, United Kingdom, Australia, and in India, where we also have a sales office. I'm actually situated in the EMEA headquarters here in Germany. We have a network of more than 300 Guava partners, so we have a clear commitment to indirect sales, and our network is still growing. We have approximately 10,000 customers in 60 countries, and we're also working with, we have strategic partnerships with Microsoft, BlackBerry, and Novell, or respectively Micro Focus, and several other global players. Our key product is Retain, which I would like to speak a little bit more in this webinar. The keywords you can see here are basically known or are just the keywords when it comes to data management. So you've probably heard about most of them. I'm not compliance is certainly an issue. I'm not going too deeply into that because I'm not a lawyer, but there are several regulations that require you to store your company data and have them ready in case of litigation or requests from the tax office, for example. And there have to be there are certain standards that have to be met. But might be also about privacy policies. There might be, for example, a maximum time that certain information is allowed to be stored. So several things to consider, but still it's not only about meeting some standards because government says so. There are several more reasons to have an archiving solution because it allows you to manage the company knowledge. 60% of digital business data is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. It can be even risky. So if you have no proper management of your data, then it's possible that confidential information is easily forwarded to the competition. So it's actually quite important to manage that and make it easy to find and utilize the important information. And among past communication, this large pile of data that exists, that your customers and your employees should be able to find what they're looking for, because that is increasing the productivity of the users who will spend less time searching, but also for the IT department because there are less requests to find and restore information that has been missing. Speaking of the IT department, there is of course a growing challenge of managing this amount of data. It's actually increasing by 40 to 60% per year. So to give you an example, if you have a photo that you took maybe 2 years ago with your then up-to-date smartphone, and you compare the resolution and the file size with a picture that you would be taking today, then you have also a very high increase, and the same goes for email signatures, email attachments, and so on. So the actual amount and the need to store information is growing rapidly, and therefore you need a proper solution that makes sure to remove redundant information and decrease the required space for storage as much as possible, because this makes your IT infrastructure faster and more stable, and therefore extending the lifespan of existing hardware, because you need to invest later in additional storage, you can work with the existing hardware already. So there are several reasons to have an archiving solution, but only one conclusion: the effective management of your digital information is no longer an option; it's an absolute must. And with Retain, that is actually something that you can achieve. We have a unified archiving solution, which means that we do not only address email, we support several platforms: Exchange, Novell GroupWise, Gmail, and Office 365. But as the name says, the unified archiving approach also includes other business relevant data, which could be available in social media, because basically every company has a Facebook page nowadays, for example, that is used to share information with customers, with partners, and might therefore also be considered business relevant. And the same goes for Twitter, LinkedIn, and several other messengers, and so on. And with Retain, it is also possible to control and monitor web searches that are done within the company network. So we support Bing, Yahoo, Google, YouTube, and so on. And considering that people travel more often, that they actually work from home, and they just don't sit in the office from 9 to 5 anymore. Therefore, a lot of information is also on the mobile devices, and here we support iOS, meaning Apple, BlackBerry, and Android. So all this information would be stored in one archive and could be accessed easily. I now want to I would now like to speak a little bit about Retain in more detail, giving you a quick overview of what the software can do, and also speak about the system requirements, or respectively the architecture of the product. First thing is that we have a single mail restore possibility. So it is not necessary to make a full backup, for example, of the latest backup of the mails, or to reconnect a PST file. The user can actually access his archive and simply click and restore the information that he's looking for. There is a litigation hold, so if you have important information, maybe even for legal issues, that must not be deleted, that can be managed with Retain. And there is basically an e-discovery function for all data. So not only for the emails, as mentioned, but also for any business relevant information from other sources like the mobile devices. All the end users have access via Outlook. I'm going to show you how that looks like in a minute. And there's also an access via web interface possible. So it's quite easy to utilize the information from anywhere the customer or the users are working. If there is at the moment maybe just a lot of PST files because the users decided to back up their information themselves, then it's also possible to migrate these PST files into Retain, because in that way the information can be easily accessed, and the users can actually work with that information instead of just having it stored somewhere in the for a worst case scenario, but it makes working with it much easier. The Retain architecture, this image might give you a quick overview. There is an Exchange server and the Retain worker, so a module in the software, is actually taking the information from the server into the Retain archive, and there is a database that manages the information, which can be Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Postgre, or Oracle. So again, we're supporting several options to best meet the requirements of your environment. The storage should be provided, and there you can of course have a local storage for your information. You can work with an SAN, with EMC or NetApp. So in this image there are only Exchange servers, but it's also possible to work with other mail systems, as I mentioned, and it's also possible to combine them. So you can have an Exchange server and the Retain worker archives the information, and at the same time you can have a group-wise system and store the information in the same Retain archive, so the users can work with both systems alike. And then, of course, on the right you can see this, the actually person using the software. So from his workstation, he can access the archive and work with all the information that has been stored there. So that is for the technical part. Addressing the actual value proposition of the product, again, I would like to speak about compliance requirements, productivity, data management, and the service level of the IT infrastructure. And the first part being the service level. As I mentioned, it's managing data, but this is a screenshot from Outlook, and you can see there is a tab Retain, and that is available to all the users, and they can easily search their Retain archive to find the information that they're looking for. Simple search is just looking for a keyword and maybe narrowing down the time that the message has been sent or received. There's of course also an advanced search. Something that is actually quite interesting is the fact that you have got a Retain folder structure down here, which is basically a copy of the regular live folder structure that the user has created himself in his Outlook. So you can actually Retain copies the folders, and the user can work with his already known folder structure that he has created, which makes it of course very efficient, very fast to search. However, if he wants to if he wants to access the archive, this is the interface. This is already in Outlook to the new version. There will be Retain 4 being released in September. Just ready for the Guava Con, which I'm going to speak about later. And this shows already that you have got a search functionality, and there's an auto fill-in helping the user finding the right information, making suggestions what he might be looking for. And you can see, I think that's a little bit clearer in the next picture, in the next screenshot, that you have actually the possibility to group the search results. So first of all, you have got the in this case they searched for the, and that is of course in a lot of subjects that is used for, but it's also or actually if it's maybe the initials of a colleague, THE, then you could narrow down the search, and you already know that you're looking for an email that your colleague has sent. Then you can narrow it down to sender or recipient, for example. And if it's a domain name that you're looking for, then you can even narrow it down to just 3 messages. So this is similar to Google search, where you have got web and images and shopping and maps and so on. There you can actually where you can already group your search results. It's the same situation here with the search results, and of course further down you can see that you have even more possibilities to narrow down. You can say you're only looking for email, phone messages, appointments, SMS, BlackBerry, Messenger types, and so on. And then you see that you have all these different search results in the result window, where you have got messages, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. Speaking about compliance, you have, of course, general settings to archive the digital information. So you can define if or when you're going to archive, what information you're going to archive, and it's also possible to create reports and journals on a regular basis to always know what's going on your system and what's happening. It's also possible to track the access to the archive, so you can always see who accessed the information, when he accessed the information, and what he did do, because Retain is based on access rights, and therefore you can always control who has access to which information and what he is allowed to do with that. So it is possible to, of course, every user should have access to his archive, but maybe he's not able to export the information. That might be just something that maybe the manager is allowed to do, or if there is an audit team for example, from the tax office that need to access the information, you could grant them access to basically the whole archive, so they know they can search for everything. But they might also might be able to export the information. That is something that a user should not do. But that is up to the administrator and to define who is allowed to do what. And still everything would be tracked. So if something is exported, if something is changed or viewed, then you can always see when that happened and who did it. So we already have, as I said, several customers that are successfully working with our software. So I would like to give you just quick overview about 3 references that we have and certain problems that they addressed with Retain. They first thing is dealing with PST files, then a quick search for emails, and also meeting compliance regulations. So the first scenario is our customer, the University of Regensburg, a German university that needed a solution to quickly search for emails. Mostly it's a big organization, and finding the necessary information is of course quite important. So that was definitely the key benefit. However, they also wanted to secure the company knowledge, especially in a university environment. People are staying there teaching maybe just for a semester, for a year. After that they leave, and there might be new people, there are interns and so on. And to make sure that if the people leave and move on, that this knowledge is not lost, then it's important to archive it in a safe place, and also be able to maybe have the next person to take over the job give access to the email archive to be able to still check on what has happened before he or she joined with the university. So that was actually quite a success. They were very happy with Retain, and so is our next customer. That is an industrial customer from the metal or steel industry, and it's the name is Hallberg Goose. They do, or they make these huge motor blocks that you can see here, for example, and the key benefit for them was that they needed a possibility to deal with PST files. As I mentioned before, if there is no other solution, users will just some of the users make sure anyway that the information is archived, at least in some place and in some way. And Outlook offers the option to create PST files, but after a while they just become too big and too much, and you cannot really access that information from the PST files. And so Hallberg needed a possibility to manage the information from the PST files, and imported them, migrated them into Retain Archive. And in addition, they were also planning a migration from Open Exchange to Microsoft Exchange, which was also done with Retain, because the nice thing about having an archive like Retain is that you can basically tell your existing mail server to store or to archive all the information into Retain, maybe just up until the last 3 days or something, and then you have a very slim mail system that you can migrate, which reduces the risk of data loss and also reduces substantially the time it takes to actually do the migration. So because you can simply reconnect to the new mail server to Retain again, have access to all your information, and you just start working again. So that was another benefit that Hallberg achieved when they implemented a Retain solution. Last but not least, we have our customer Hessischer Rundfunk. It's a German TV and radio station, and their main concern, their key benefit was that they need to access the data, and especially they need to access the data from everywhere, because they have a lot of employees, journalists, editors that do not work in the office, but that are traveling, that work from home, that are on site, of course, where filming does take place, or where news are being reported, and so on. So that it was mostly about data access, and that could also be done with Retain. So to just give a quick summary, Retain is the solution to efficiently archive and utilize your digital information. You're meeting compliance requirements, increasing user productivity, and improving the service level of your IT infrastructure. And the benefits of this innovative data management do not only apply to email, but also to social media, search requests, and mobile devices. And if you would like to learn more, then you're most welcome to join us at Guava Con. Guava Con is an event that we're hosting for the 10th time this year, so it's our 10th anniversary this year. It will take place in Berlin, September 22nd and 23rd, and we will have Microsoft speakers that will speak about the first news about Exchange 2016. There will be also speakers from Micro Focus, formerly Novell, that will talk about the Novell strategy. We have BlackBerry Enterprise and many more speakers, and it's a great opportunity to meet Guava, because we will be introducing Retain 4, and there will be also some news for social and mobile archiving. And it's just a great place to speak with customers, our partners, and just get first-hand information. So I hope I see you all there. For the time being, I would like to thank you for taking the time and join me on this webinar. And yeah, here are my contact details once again. So if there are any questions, just feel free to contact me, and have a good day. If there are any questions, then please post them in the chat window now. And otherwise, I hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.